Imagine a town where the skies were no longer free. A place where every wedding, every festival, every campaign was held hostage, not by government, not by nature, but by men who claimed to control the rain. They were called the rain charmers. Powerful, feared, untouchable. Families borrowed money just to appease them. Even the king, the mighty Igwe, was at their mercy. But in the midst of fear, one young woman, Chiamaka, rose and said, "Enough is enough." What followed shook the heavens, broke the chains of a whole village, and turned fear into laughter. This is the story of the fall of the rain charmers. Up in the dais, Chiamaka sat in her richly embroidered wrapper, coral beads glistening on her neck, her face calm and unmoved. Her groom glanced at her nervously, but she leaned closer and whispered, "Fear not, today God will show himself." The musicians, unsure whether to stop or continue, started drumming again timidly. The talking drum cried out, echoing the confusion. Then, like a final stroke, the meteorologist stepped out of the van. He wore a long white lab coat that flapped in the wind. He pointed the device towards the sky, its lights blinking red and green. The villagers gasped and stepped back. To them, it looked like a weapon of thunder. The charmers froze. None of them dared move again. Not a single drop of rain fell. The clouds only swirled restlessly, as if confused, before drifting slowly away. A shout of victory erupted from the crowd. Women ululated, men clapped and stamped their feet. Young boys ran up and down the compound screaming, "Rain no fit follow, rain no fit follow." The charmers, they stood rooted, their faces pale, sweat glistening on their foreheads. For the first time in living memory, they were powerless, moping like defeated soldiers as Chiamaka's wedding continued without a single drop of rain. The villagers will talk about this day for years. The moment the clouds drifted away, something snapped in the crowd. What began as nervous laughter quickly exploded into wild celebration. The drums boomed with new strength, the flutes sang, and women broke into dance right inside the compound. The bouncers exchanged knowing nods, their muzzles glistening under the sun that suddenly pierced through the clouds. Chiamaka's father, who had been sweating buckets in fear, jumped to his feet and shouted with joy, my daughter, Chineke dindu." His wife fell on her knees, weeping openly, half from relief, half from pride. "She no bring us shame, she no bring us shame." She wailed, her wrapper soaked with tears. But the real sight to behold was the defeated rain charmers. They stood scattered like broken palm fronds after a storm. Some still tried to whisper excuses to each other, but the crowd was already pointing fingers at them. "See am, na them, wey dey use rain, dey control us all these years." One man shouted, shaking his fist. Another woman added, "So una get mouth again? Una wey confess like chicken wey see knife." The mockery spread. Children formed a circle and began chanting, "Charmers don't fall, charmers don't fall." They clapped and danced, laughing loudly, not even afraid anymore. Meanwhile, guests from faraway towns who had come expecting trouble looked around in awe. One of them, a plump woman from the next village, exclaimed, "So na true, wetin we hear about these people? Chineke. And small girl like Chiamaka fit disgrace them." She shook her head, her gold earrings jingling. "This village no go remain the same again, no." The prophetess stood by the van, raising her staff slowly. "The Lord has given us victory this day," she declared. Her voice rang out, and the villagers, carried away by the excitement, chorused, "Amen!" so loudly that the earth trembled. The pastors surrounded Chiamaka and her groom, praying over them. One of the bouncers spread his hands wide, keeping the crowd from pressing too close. The meteorologist returned calmly to his van, the dish still spinning gently as though keeping watch. To the villagers, the van has become a holy mystery, a weapon of the heavens. Nobody dared go near. As the ceremony carried on, people whispered to each other about what they had just witnessed. "Abeg, na which kind courage Chiamaka get?" a man asked. "Na faith mixed with sense," his friend replied. "You see say she use prophetess, pastor, native doctor join, plus that van wey dey turn like octopus. Even evil go fear that combination o." The food and drinks began to flow, but more than jollof rice and palm wine, what the villagers feasted on was the victory itself. The story of how the Renchamas had confessed, one after the other, how the clouds had been driven away, and how the dreaded men had been left powerless, spread like wildfire from one guest to another. By evening, as the bride danced in the center with her groom, bees glistening, feet stamping in rhythm with the drums, people were no longer just celebrating a wedding, they were celebrating freedom. Because for the first time in living memory, the reign of fear was broken. But while the villagers rejoiced, the Renchamas huddled in a corner, whispering bitterly, their eyes darted toward Chiamaka and her strange allies, the prophetess, the pastors, the bouncers, and the most especially the van with its tentacles. The Chama's pride had been bruised in public, and one of them muttered under his breath, "This matter no go end here." By dawn the next day, Umuozara village was buzzing like a market square on a day. The cock had not crowed twice before young girls were already at the village stream, fetching water and gossiping about nothing else but Chiamaka's wedding. "Me, I no go ever forget yesterday," one girl said, balancing her clay pot on her hip. "When that van with tentacles begin turn, I nearly run go hide inside bush. I think say na masquerade spirit." Another girl laughed so hard she nearly spilled her water. "Na true you talk. Even the Renchamas fear pass us. You no see how them begin to confess like small pikin." An older woman at the stream added, "I tell una say, pride go always disgrace person. For years them dey use rain dey control us, but yesterday, God don shame them." She shook her head proudly. If na play, nobody go ever play with Chiamaka again. By mid-morning, the entire market square was alive. Palm wine tappers, goat sellers, women with baskets of crayfish. Everybody was talking about one thing. Some had already composed mocking songs. Children chanted as they chased each other. "Chamas fall, Chiamaka stand. Chamas fall, Chiamaka stand. Rain, run, sun, shine. Chamas confess, confess, oh." The song spread so quickly that even old men with chewing sticks hummed it under their breath. Meanwhile, the Renchamas were nowhere to be seen in public. That disgrace still stung like fresh pepper in their eyes. By late afternoon, they gathered secretly in an abandoned hut at the edge of the village. The mood was tense. One of them slapped the ground with his palm. "We cannot allow this nonsense to stand. If ordinary girl fit challenge us with pastors, prophetess, even bring that strange tentacle machine, then tomorrow others go try the same." Another hissed, "Our power no weak, but na confusion they use scatter us yesterday. Instead of us to unite, everybody come begin to confess like goat." "Confess?" one spat. "Na the fear of that van wey carry the dish, wey dey spin like wetin I no know. My mind tell me say that thing fit swallow person if you joke with am o." The oldest among them, with grey hair and piercing eyes, lifted his hand for silence. "We must restore our fear in this village. If not, people go begin treat us like dust. We need to strike again, and this time, show them that no force can stand us again." But even as he spoke, doubt flickered in their eyes. Chiamaka's wedding has cracked something deeper than their pride. It had broken their monopoly of fear. Back in the village square, Chiamaka herself walked through with her new husband, greeting people. Every corner they passed, villagers hailed her. "Lioness of Umuozara, bride wey shame the shameless." Chiamaka rain no fit touch your head. Some women even knelt to touch her wrapper. She blushed, but carried herself with quiet confidence. To the villagers, she was no longer just a bride. She had become a symbol of defiance, a voice against oppression. But the Chamas, watching from the shadows, whispered among themselves, this battle never finished. The Rain Chamas did not wait long. Barely a week after Chiamaka's wedding, word spread that one of the wealthiest traders in Umuozara, Chifu was planning the grand naming ceremony of his newborn son. It was to be the biggest celebration the village had ever seen in years. Goats were already tied in rows, palm wine cakes lined up, and drummers hired from neighboring towns. The Chamas saw their chance. If we strike this one, their leader growled under a secret midnight meeting. Fear will return. People will forget Chiamaka's stubbornness. Yes, another added, let us show them that her wedding was a mistake of chance. By the time we finish with Chifu Bidike, nobody go ever try us again. They agreed. This time they will attack in unity. No confession, no hesitation. The sky will open like Noah's Day, and the shame will drown both Chifu Bidike and the memory of Chiamaka's victory. On the morning of the ceremony, Umuozara was buzzing again. People streamed in from all corners, eager for free food and palm wine, but secretly also curious. Would the Rain Chamas dare, or had they truly lost their power? Chifu Bidike, confident in his wealth, dismissed all warnings. I have settled the ones that matter, he told his relatives. Besides, what can rain do to me? Even if it falls, I have canopies enough for 10 villages. He laughed loudly, chest heaving with pride. But unknown to him, the Chamas had gathered on the outskirts of the village, their charms laid out in circles, their mouths muttering incantations, their eyes blazing. Black smoke rose from their calabashes as they called the clouds. At first, the guests barely noticed. The sun still shone, though faintly, but gradually a strange wind swept through the village, bending plantains' leaves until they rattled like drums. Chickens scattered into the bush. The sky dimmed unnaturally fast. An old man exclaimed, "This one not be ordinary weather, oh." The clouds rolled in thick, black and heavy. A growl of thunder echoed and lightning slashed across the horizon. People looked at each other nervously. The Chamas don't come again, oh, someone whispered. The drummers faltered, then stopped. Mothers clutched their children closer. Guests who had traveled from far exchanged worried glances. Not again, oh, one man groaned. We no fit carry another disgrace. Then, without warning, the heavens opened. Rain poured like buckets from the skies, crashing onto the canopies with deafening force. In minutes, the ground turned to mud. Food was drenched and palm wine cakes toppled up. The canopy poles bent under the storm, and guests fled in every direction, their fine clothes plastered to their bodies. Women wailed, men cursed, children cried. The naming ceremony was ruined. And standing at the edge of the chaos, some villagers swore they saw shadowy figure, Rain Chamas laughing bitterly under the storm, their eyes glowing like fireflies in the downpour. By evening, Chifu Bidike sat on the floor of his compound, his wrapper soaked, his pride shattered. "Ah, they have disgraced me," he cried, holding his head. "So all my goods, all my kegs of wine, all my money wasted." The story spread faster than wildfire. People said the rain that day was worse than the politician's disgrace, almost as if the heavens themselves had been torn open, and the whispers began again. The Chamas are back. But deep in the hearts of the villagers, a question born. If Chiamaka could win, why couldn't others? And the seed of doubt refused to die. The disgrace of Chief Obidike's naming ceremony set the village on fire. For days, no other topic filled mouths. The market square buzzed endlessly as people argued back and forth. Some insisted Chiamaka's victory was genuine. "Did you not see with your own eyes?" Mamo Gechi said, pounding yam furiously in her mortar. Those men confessed one by one like goats ready for slaughter. If not for Chiamaka, we for still they live under their yoke. She is chosen. But others shook their heads. Nonsense. Papa Nana spat, his chewing stick clamped angrily between his teeth. That girl just got lucky. The Chamas were not ready that day. They allowed her to shine small so that when they strike again, the fear go double. In another corner of the market, young boys gathered around a palm wine calabash, their voices heated. If Chiamaka fit bring pastors, prophetess, even that tentacle van, then maybe na the same thing we need for our event. So one scoffed, and where you want see money for all those kind of things? Where you go even see the tentacle van? Even the native doctor will follow her no cheap. Have you want sell your papa farmland? The boys laughed, but uneasily. The seed was planted. Chiamaka had broken the spell of unquestioned fear. The rain Chamas, however, were not laughing. Their hut of meetings had become a place of bitter quarrel. You see wetin happen? The people no fear us like before, one hissed. True, another agreed. Before, when rain scatter ceremony, people no even ask question. But now, them they compare us with that small girl. The oldest among them slammed his fist on the mat. That Chiamaka must be humble. If not, our power goes scatter like broken calabash. We must choose our target carefully, something bigger than wedding or naming. They murmured in agreement, their eyes gleamed with dark resolve. Meanwhile, Chiamaka and her husband were settling into married life, but she was far from forgotten. Every time she stepped into the market, women held her loudly. Lioness of Umuozara, bride wey no dey fear rain. Children still sang the mocking song about the Chamas whenever they saw her. Sometimes she laughed, other times she kept silence, knowing her defiance had painted a target on her back. Her parents, however, were restless. One evening, her mother pulled her aside. My daughter, you have done what no one has done before. But please remember, these people are dangerous. Don't provoke them again. Let your victory rest. Chiamaka looked into her mother's worried eyes and smiled faintly. Mama, if you give fear a seat in your heart, it will rule you forever. These men have tormented us enough. It's time we remind them they are not gods. Her words spread quietly among those close to her. Some admired her boldness, others thought she was inviting trouble. By the next market day, the village was divided into two camps. Those who believed Chiamaka's victory was divine and permanent, and those who said she was tempting fate, that the rain Chamas will crush her sooner or later. The tension thickened. Songs of mockery and whispers of dread filled the air side by side. And somewhere in the shadows, the rain Chamas were already plotting the strike that would shape not just a family, but the entire village. The rain Chamas sat cross-legged in their hidden hut, the air heavy with the smell of burnt herbs and palm kernel smoke. Their leader's voice was low but sharp. If we want to scatter the fate of this village, we must strike where it hurts most. Not wedding, not naming. We must disgrace the throne itself. Silence followed. Then one of them asked in awe, "You mean the Igwe?" The old man nodded. Yes, he is preparing for the Ofala festival, the biggest celebration in this land. When we flood his palace, when guests flee like rats, when his crown is drenched with storm, then the people will remember who rules the sky. The others clapped their hands on the ground in agreement. So shall it be. The Igwe of Umuozara, a man who valued his throne above all else, could no longer sit and watch. His palace was no longer a place of respect, but a marketplace of gossip. His chiefs had started murmuring that if he did nothing, even children would stop bowing when he passed. So one morning, with the royal gong beating across the land, an announcement spread like wildfire. The palace gong sounded before dawn. Its heavy bam, 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 bam rolled through the misty air, bouncing up the hills and echoing down every compound in Umuozara. People came out rubbing their eyes, asking, "Who died? Which war has come again?" But no war, no death, only a decree from the Igwe. By the orders of His Majesty, the Igwe of Umuozara, All returnees are summoned to the palace for a great settlement before the Ofala festival. Let this matter be resolved once and for all. The news spread like wildfire. Farmers paused mid-hoe. Women fetching water left their pots by the stream. Even hunters returning from the bush turned back. Today go hot too, they whispered. The returnees heard it too. Some laughed with pride, boasting, at last the king, one respect us. He don't tire for disgrace. Others frowned, sensing trouble, but too proud to stay away. By mid-morning, the palace yard was full. Villagers pressed against the bamboo fence. Children climbed trees to see. They had all gathered, hungry for drama. The returnees began to arrive in groups. Old men with chalk marks on their foreheads, walking with staff and swagger. Middle-aged men with amulets and feathers tied around their arms. Young apprentices dragging calabashes that rattled with charms. They greeted each other loudly, boasting as if they were the true lords of Umuozara. Inside, the Igwe sat on his throne. He wore a red cap. Lion skin draped over his shoulders, and his ivory staff gleamed in the sun. But beside him, in the shadows, stood Chiamaka, the young woman who had shown these same men pepper on her wedding day. Her eyes were steady, lips curved in a small knowing smile. The returnees entered proudly. Some even chuckled. This palace don't get sense again. Them don't realize say we no be people to play with. They sat waiting for kola nuts and wine as customs demanded, but instead of kola, the gates behind them slammed shut with a thunder that shook the palace. Soldiers of the local council authority in dark uniforms with batons swinging stormed in. Confusion broke instantly. Wetin dey happen? Wetin dey happen? One charmer shouted. Na joke? Another asked, clutching his charms. But fear was already crawling across their faces. The Igwe rose slowly, his voice like rolling thunder. For too long, you men have held this land captive. You have shamed us before visitors, ruined our children's joy, turned yourselves into small gods. But no more. This palace bows to no man but the Almighty. And today, Umuozara takes back its freedom. At his final signal, the soldiers moved. One by one, the returnees were handcuffed. Their chalk-stained fingers trembled. Amulets dropped and cracked like useless beads. Some wept, some cursed, some struggled and screamed, "Igwe, you can't do this to us, we control the clouds." But the villagers outside were roaring with laughter. Women clapped and ululated. Men stomped their feet, chanting, "Freedom, freedom, freedom." Children danced and pointed as the so-called masters of the realm were dragged like goats to slaughter. One old charmer shouted, "This is a trap." The Igwe staff struck the ground. "Yes, a trap, and you walked into it." But the surprise wasn't over. "Your Majesty," one of the council soldiers said, "what about those who refused to come?" The Igwe smiled coldly. He turned to the charmers now trembling in chains. "You know yourselves better than anyone. Give us their names." And their names poured out like flood waters. Each charmer betrayed the other, desperate to save his own skin. Okonkwo no come. Ezigbo they hide for backyard. Chibonna no one show face. The list grew long, and the soldiers marched out that same day to hunt down every last of them. By sunset, even those who thought they had escaped were dragged into the palace yard, bound and ashamed. The villagers were stunned. Never in their lifetime had they seen such boldness from the throne. The fear of the returnees, which had haunted generations, melted like butter in fire. And there in the shadows, still watching with the fire in her eyes, was Chiamaka. It was her idea, her courage, her voice in the Igwe's ear that had sparked this day. She had not only saved her own marriage from disgrace, she had delivered her people from bondage. As the soldiers loaded the last of the returnees into the waiting vans, the Igwe lifted his ivory staff high. His words carried over the crowd like a mighty wind. "From today, let it be known the sky belongs to God and the land belongs to Umuozara. No man shall hold us hostage again." The people roared, a thunder louder than any storm. Some said later that even the clouds stained that evening as though heaven itself was smiling on Umuozara. And that was how the returnees, once feared like spirits, once obeyed like kings, fell in a single day, not by thunder, not by lightning, but by the cunning of a young bride and the courage of a king who remembered his crown. The rain charmers of Umuozara thought they owned the clouds. For years, they ruled with terror, soaking the dreams of their own people. But the day came when fear bowed to courage, a bride's boldness, a king's decision, and a people's laughter ended their reign forever. Now, whenever dark clouds gather over Umuozara, the villagers no longer tremble. They point to the skies and say, the heavens belong to God, not to men. And somewhere in the village square, mothers still whisper to their daughters, remember Chiamaka, remember the day the rain charmers fell.
Where's the land going to hide? Are the people going to hide there? They have come. They have come. Look at them. Look at them. They are landing in my home. Evildoers. Where's the land going to hide? Where are we going to run to? They have come here. Rain charmers, they have come, they have come. Where are we gonna run to? Hey, hey, The night has fallen in the broad daylight. The night has fallen in the broad daylight. Lightning. And who's gonna save the land? Who's gonna save the land? The night has fallen in the broad daylight. They have come here. The storm bringers, the rain charmers, the rain harvesters, evildoers. They have come. They have come. Where we gonna run to? Where we gonna hide? Panic everywhere, weeping, crying, gnashing of teeth. Who will deliver the land from their grip? Who will set the land free? There's nowhere to hide. They are ruling, they are reigning, they are in control. Oh, look at them, they have come again, yo. They are landing them back. The evildoers, they have come. The storm bringers, the rain charmers, the rain harvesters, they have come again, yo.